about to draw this pair of pears. This is a drawing found by an artist online, Mr. Smallen. Just found that. So the reference photo is on Google Classroom, and we are going to draw this. Before we get started, we are going to start with some basic shapes that we see in these two pairs. So for example, there's this round shape and then kind of a cone shape here attached, and likewise there. So we're going to lay out this composition first, and then we will get to the shading and all that stuff. So here we go. I'm on the same paper as the mug from before. So let's loosely sketch in a couple circles. This one is higher than this one, and they are kind of right next to each other. They're about the same size. And then you have that comes just below this bottom circle is the edge of this pear in this shape. I have them that one too high. It's okay to have to modify your shapes, of course. You can't get it right the first time, so you see how sketchy this is, and that's totally fine. This circle needs to come up just a bit higher, and then it's got this shape attached. What I'm also looking at is the negative space between. So sometimes in drawing the space around objects will help you draw that object itself. So for example, there's a space in here that I can look at on my other screen and compare this light that above the shadow. I'm also going to sketch in those shadows. I can see that as a very clear shape on my reference, so I'm going to include them. And then you see the stem. So right now what I have is a little confusing. It's easy to get lost in there. Then you can go in with an eraser and you can refine to help you find the more accurate shapes within what you've just drawn. You will also erase your overlapping lines that you've drawn. You do not have to erase every single line that you put in there. You can leave it sketchy. These are sketches. This is practice sketches. We're learning, so you don't have to remove everything. I'm gonna lay in my light values and indicate some highlights. So I can even put in values over the whole thing and blend them out if I want. I am gonna erase this line. Remember, just like the sphere, shading a pear won't be very much unlike it because the bottom of it is very spherical. So remember that whenever you're shading. Also remember that you can use any shading technique that you like. Scribbling, stippling, hatching, cross hatching. I might use even just a big conglomerate of all of them in my drawings. I like layering the different drawing styles. Once you get to a place where you kind of like the shapes a little bit better, you've refined it, and you see I'm using my lighter pencil, the H value pencil. I'm gonna make this pear quite a bit larger to get those light values in, and then I go back to my B pencil. And I'm looking constantly back and forth. If you could see my eyes, you could see me constantly looking at my reference. That's a common mistake that students make when they're drawing, is they don't look at their reference enough. I'm gonna go ahead and go in now with the shape of the shadow. This pear is projecting on this one. And I'm just very scribbly. I'm just going, instead of outlining that shape, I am just going right into just shading it. You do not have to outline everything. You can go straight into your shading. And the more heavy you make a dark shadow between these two objects, this is just like we did with the mug handle, you're just creating a space between those two objects. You're creating a relationship between this pair and its shadow on the next pair. You're creating depth whenever you do this. I'm gonna shade just the shadows too to show you that without any more development of these two pairs, just drawing the shadows alone is gonna create some depth in my drawing. So only the dark parts. And a good rule of thumb for finding darks in a drawing is squinting your eyes. So if you squint, you can pick up those darks. Your eyes will see them a little bit more clearly. So I suggest that. Now also, this is how drawing can be like carving. So I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so you can see just how sloppy all the lines are here on this pair. But whenever I put the shadow underneath it and darken it, I am drawing the shape of that pair while drawing the shadow. Kind of flattens out on the bottom of the shadow, curves around the front and under the stem. Kind of flat, curve. Don't be afraid to make it really, really dark. Right here, I'm gonna press as hard as I can with my B pencil. And I'm gonna really, really intensify this shadow. I'm pressing very hard. Not so much as you're gonna like poke a hole in your paper, but, and again, you can use hatching, cross hatching with your shadows too. You do need to be a little bit more careful about the direction of lines on a surface like this, because like if I did all my lines straight down, it might give the illusion that that pair was like falling off, that shadow was on an upright surface. So I've created a relationship between the surface here and that pair now. And I'm going to do the same thing over here with this pair. Again, this shadow is going to help me define this pair. Paying attention to the negative spaces between my reference. So you're going to be drawing just like me. You can draw from my video if you want, and you can pause and slow it down. Or just like me, you can go in and you can draw from this image as your reference. Either way is fine. Now you can go in and you can start putting in some of the darker values on the pair to make it look more round. Give it some more dimension. So I've shaded the left side of this pair pretty much all the way from the top to the bottom. And then there's this reflected highlight bouncing up on the bottom. So again, sometimes a way to make a light look lighter is to darken what's around it. So I'm going to create a little bit of more darker value outside of that, and that will create a light. This darker value connects to the medium gray value that's on the right side of this pair in the reference. And remember, as I said before, you can go off outside of that original shape. You don't have to have everything be super precise. These are just different drawing styles. Some people do like a lot of precision in their drawing. Some people don't. Either way is fine. There's a little bit of a highlight that I can see right here that you can do. You can take your eraser and kind of pull that out a little bit more. So in that way you can use your eraser to draw as well. So I'm going back in here, and now I can see that now that I've developed these values that I need to intensify these values over here on my shadow as well. And it makes a value scale from dark to a medium tone there. I'm gonna go back to my H value and get in a few more of these lights, build up a few more scales on my values. You see me jumping back and forth between both, that's fine, you can do that as well. In this example, drawing is kind of scribbly, or scratchy, I would say. It's cross-hatching. It's not really blended. If you would like to blend, you can. You can use your blender. It creates a more soft texture in drawings. I'm not a super fan of that, but what you can do is after blending, you can go back in with either of your pencils and create more of a linear effect. And I do really like the way that that looks. It has a little bit more texture and adds a little bit of depth to the drawing. So drawing and painting both, and a lot of art making activities it's kind of like a dance. You go back and forth with your materials. Work a little bit here, work a little bit there. I'm gonna go get a little bit more dimension over here, and I'm going to call this demo at least quits, and you can develop yours even further in your drawing. Intensify the values on the top here, give it some depth and some roundness. You've got to have value range if you want to make something in your drawing look round or dimensional. So we're drawing the pears and the mug and all of these more simple shapes and forms because this is perfect practice for you for developing a drawing that's a little bit more complex. So all of this is just getting practice creating forms. So notice also that there are multiple areas of highlight, not just shadows. So you see a lot of dimension happening in this pear. So it's really simple on a sphere. There's one main highlight and a little reflected light highlight. But the more complex a form is, the more highlights you're going to find throughout that form. So just open your eyes to those. Be on the lookout. From this stage, what I'd like you to do is just develop the drawing further. Take a really close look at your examples, the example photo, and develop your drawing further. So look where something looks weak or where it doesn't look quite as round. Like this area for me looks quite flat. So I'm gonna go in with my H pencil and I'm gonna intensify some of those lighter values. I also need to pay a little bit of mind to the stem on this one. So you see me leaving this white area and adding a little bit of light values around it to give that one area just a little bit more pop. And that looks quite a bit better. I also need to, in a sense, sculpt out the stem of this pear. It's really dark there. Remember, you can squint to find darks in a drawing. A little shadow of the stem on the underside of the pear there. And then it just juts out. It creates a really nice dark. And there's just a subtle highlight down the length of the stem there. My drawing is quite small, actually. You can probably tell by the size of my hands and the eraser next to my drawing. Hopefully yours is somewhat larger, and then you can get in a little bit more detail. So, take a look back and forth between your reference and your drawing and decide where do you need to add more darks? Where do you need to add more refinement and smoothing out some lines, erasing out some more highlights, or blending out some more? There is your drawing for the day.